Today, I'm joined by Scrum.org professional Scrum trainer Duncan Maddox. We are talking about sprints with practical tips for how to help your team have a successful sprint. First time, every time. This is part 2, so if you haven't checked out part 1 yet, please go ahead and click that link below and we'll get into the video. What I found is teams really like sprints after 3 or 4 or however many. They really grow to like them and then struggle to imagine going back to the old way of working. But that initial hearts and minds thing of we're going to try changing this and it's going to directly affect you as a person and the way you work, that can be a huge barrier to entry. In your experience, what have teams found most challenging when they've started sprinting, or challenges in continuing sprinting after they've been doing it for a while?
I think one of the common objections, what we were talking about before, is if they're used to working in a more traditional sort of project management approach, then they're used to the beginning of the project being very relaxed and things ramping up over time. And then at the end of project, desperately cutting scope and throwing away all the testing they were going to do and working long hours, long days. And they're concerned that sprinting is going to be that they're always sprinting, that they're always at that kind of level, that every day is a long day, and that they're always desperately scrabbling to meet the next deadline. Whereas Scrum's about more of a sustainable pace. It is a marathon, not a sprint.
What do we think of that word, sprint? Go on. What do we think of that? Why? Because what you said just there is totally true. It sounds like you're going to be flat out the whole time as a team. You're going to be working harder. When actually the truth is they're going to be probably ideally working less and delivering more. But a sprint, that name.
Yeah, we can obsess about the value of words, but I guess they're important. A lot of people push back on that because they think I don't want to be sprinting full out every week. That's not sustainable. It's the word they used. I think if your team is working in a sustainable way and has time for continuous improvement and they've got all the right values in place, then they'll like sprinting. But yeah, certainly the name itself, the connotations of us working flat out, beating the horse to death, is one of the small things we have to overcome.
I saw a really great post on LinkedIn, which was talking about Scrum without the jargon. If we took away the jargon from Scrum and just talked about it in naturally accessible language, would that increase adoption? Would that make it easier for people to understand what we're doing without us talking about the technical complexity of what actually is a sprint?
Yeah, I think I saw that post as well.
It was insightful.
It was pretty good. Certainly, I think it might be an obvious and easy way of overcoming that objection. If you say, well, let's just work, and every 2 weeks, let's just review where we're up to, or every 4 weeks, let's just review where we're up to. And without introducing that sprint terminology, then there's a lot less reason for people to push back.
A lot less resistance, true. If a team's resistant to trying Scrum, or maybe they just don't know what to expect out of it, it's really helpful to say to them, well, we're just going to try a little experiment. All we're going to do is every morning, we're going to have a quick catch up, 15 minutes. And we're just going to chat about what we're going to do for the day and how things are. And then after a week or so, we're going to have another little chat. We're going to have a catch up and just see how it's roughly all gone and where we are. That reduces this resistance to retrospective, daily stand-up, review, all of this, the words that can be off-putting.
Yeah, and that approach really is in line with the underlying principles of Scrum. That Scrum is all about making these small experiments, validating that it works. So if your team don't want to do Scrum, then just get them to work in chunks of 2 weeks, and at the beginning of that, do a kind of planning thing. Every day, do a kind of stand-up thing, and at the end of it, have a kind of review and retrospective thing. And if they like that, they'll probably like Scrum.
Yeah, that would be a real fun experiment. Scrum by stealth. Start doing Scrum with a team without saying Scrum or any of the words. Just do it. And then at the end of it, you're like, ding, hey, you didn't know this, but you're doing Scrum.
Yeah, and we hate Scrum, but we love what we're doing.
Yeah.
which isn't Scrum at all. So probably something we haven't talked about is, we talked about the cadence, and we always want our sprints to be the same length. What about when we want to give up on a sprint? When we've just decided it's too hard, or it's just a good idea just to cancel the sprint?
This thing that apparently can happen in the Scrum Guide, at the discretion of the product owner, we can cancel the sprint, but which I personally have never seen happen in a real life, that thing.
Yeah, I've only seen it happen once or maybe twice.
It's a bold move to make that happen, partly because what you were saying, it breaks the cadence. It's very disruptive to the team.
We've got to remember that the development team can't decide that they just want to stop the sprint because it's too difficult. What we're talking about is when the goal that we set at the beginning of the sprint now no longer makes sense. It's obsolete. That's only happened to me once in 10 years, where the business, the marketplace has changed to such an extent that we just stopped and did something else completely different. It doesn't happen very often.
It's a good point too, and it's very important if that happens for the product owner and the Scrum Master to ensure the development team understand, kind of like, hey, it's not you, it's me. We've decided to do this. You guys didn't break this. It's not a failure on your part. The circumstances have changed and we're aborting, because to counteract that demoralization that must happen, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's not a great place to be in. It's not pleasant. You definitely don't want to be doing it too often.
And because there's no gap between sprints, we start the next one straight away, I guess, depending on the nature of the cancellation. That's really disruptive to the working week. If the team have got used to sprints start on Monday and end on Friday, for example, now suddenly we've got a sprint starting on Wednesday. That increases all of that complexity, and the team have to realign themselves.
Yeah, and everything we've talked about cadence, suddenly we just thrown that out the window because we've cancelled the sprint. So it's definitely something you want to avoid.
But what I have seen much more frequently than either suggestions of cancelling a sprint, suggestions of extending a sprint. I do see that a lot in teams.
Yeah, that's normally because the team are almost done. We're 90% of the way done. We're just a day or two off getting done. Can we just extend the sprint?
Yeah, if we had a couple more days, we could get this done. So let's just
definitely get it done in a couple of days. And that's what's great and challenging and so powerful about the sprint is that you don't extend it because you don't know that you're a couple of days off. You think that you're a couple of days off. And what's more powerful than extending the sprint is knowing empirically, definitely, factually, what you can actually get done within a sprint.
You're totally right. And also it helps the teams, if they understand, it doesn't make a difference. If this bit of work's going to get done in 2 days, it's going to get done in 2 days, irrespective of what sprint we're in. It really doesn't matter. The only difference is that it gets done in sprint 9 rather than sprint 8. It's still done in 2 days' time. Which sprint it happens in is largely arbitrary, but teams do like to deliver what they've forecast.
Yeah, and we do cling on to this this sort of perception that what we do is simple and predictable, and if we haven't met our forecast, then that's always a bad thing, as opposed to things sometimes are more complex than we thought. We can uncover more value and deliver a better product along the way. That's fine. But I think your observation that teams love to deliver within the sprint they said they were going to, and they do get fixated on that. Whereas at the end of the day, if they're going to get it done in 2 days, they're still going to get it done in 2 days, whether it's in this sprint or the next sprint. And there's nothing in Scrum saying that you can't release it, on Tuesday, even though it's not the end of the sprint.
One of the reasons this can happen can be something like a product owner applying pressure to the team and treating what they talk about in planning as a commitment, as a contract for what they are going to deliver in this sprint. Therefore, if they need more time to deliver it in this sprint, the sprint needs to be extended.
Yeah. And obviously we know that this isn't a commitment, it's a forecast, but that feels like a whole video all on its own about complexity and predictability and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. I think that the bottom line is that it doesn't really matter which sprint a piece of work gets done in. It will be done when it's done with the team's best effort. We don't extend a sprint simply to say that we've delivered this in this sprint rather than this sprint, because there's no value in doing that.
Okay, so if we were to think about the sprint, if we were to try to describe what the sprint is.
I think it's really cool to think of a sprint as a mini project. It's got all the characteristics of a product. It's got a project. It's got a start. It's got the bit in the middle where we do the work. It's got the bit at the end where we look at what we've done. It's every sprint, 1 week or a month, is a mini project for the teams. And at the end of that project, they can say, tick, we succeeded. Or at the end of the sprint, they can say, tick, we succeeded. It helps give context to all of their work and boundaries to it. And it feels quite familiar, the sprint as a project. What's this week's project? What's next week's project? What's our sprint goal? The goal is effectively the thing the project is going to deliver. And then in the next sprint, we have another goal, another kind of related project.
Yeah, if we think of a project as a fixed period of time with a certain set of deliverables, then I think that's a really good analogy, the sprint as the project. What's different from most traditional projects is that the scope's variable, but the time is fixed. That's what's unique about a sprint. In traditional project management, your scope will be fixed, and you'll adjust everything else to deliver that scope. You'll adjust the time, you'll adjust the resources, you'll adjust the budget, and you'll probably also adjust the quality. In Scrum, we say the quality is fixed or improves. Our scope is variable, but it's our time. Our time is what's fixed.
And at the end of the day, Duncan, it is a marathon, not a sprint.
Now, don't you edit out the fact that I said that first.
I don't remember you saying that. Or is it a sprint and not a marathon? Which is it, Dunk? Is it a marathon, not a sprint, or is it a sprint and a marathon?
It should be a marathon, not a sprint, really, shouldn't it? So it's a sprint, not a marathon. But conceptually, it's probably a marathon, not a sprint.
It's both a marathon, not a sprint, and a sprint and not a marathon.
Really a series of small sort of jogs.
Scrum chat.
Scrum chat.
Scrum chat. So there we go. It turns out that it's a marathon and not a sprint, except for those times where it's a sprint and not a marathon. If you've enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click that little like button and have a think about subscribing to the channel. We have practical videos here for making Scrum work for you. This has been the Scrum Master's Guide to the Galaxy, and we will see you on the next one.
Ball, you passed me the ball.
You don't know where you're going. I know you
turn this off. Turn the microphone off.
You just want to start that again.
What was the question? Stop recording. I'm not falling for that. Stop recording.
Stopped.
Just saying stopped. I can still see that it's recording.
No, I clicked the mouse. Oh, is it still recording? That's weird.
Still recording.